Hey, what's up, mushroom party people? We are back and it is time to put our morel bed together. It's the middle of October and I have a bunch of spawn bags ready, and we're gonna go ahead and do some surface inoculations here on the same bed that I've been working with. It's a bed I worked with last year. I tried some black morel strains. Didn't get any mushrooms this spring, but I'm kind of considering this a 2 to 3 year project with this bed out behind my shed, and we'll just see if we can get any mushrooms. I'm just gonna try some different strains, try some different things for a couple few years here, see what we can figure out, if anything. So as I mentioned, I have some spawn bags ready to go here, totally loaded up with Sclerotia. Hopefully you guys can see all that Sclerotia in there. Some on the side here too. This is my strain number 4 that I started from wild spore collections of Morchella americana, which is the yellow morel that's common in my area. It's not actually common, they're pretty hard to find, but when you do find yellows here, they're Morchella americana. I took a bunch of spores, made a video on that as well, how to go from spores to agar. I will link that video in the description of this video. But I got some nice cultures going from spores, and it was strain number 4. Strain number 4 was the one that seemed the most aggressive, made a lot of Sclerotia. So that's the one I'm working with here. And you can see it makes Sclerotia on grain, it makes Sclerotia on sawdust, which is cool because a lot of times the black morel strains will make Sclerotia really aggressively like this, but the yellows don't always do that. So the fact that this yellow strain is doing this, I think is cool, but you never know with morels. We'll see what happens. In case you guys don't know what Sclerotia are, they are these little dense balls of mycelial tissue, and they are basically an energy storage device for the mycelium. So the mycelium will make these Sclerotia, and these are sort of the precursor to mushroom formation. So if you get morel strains that are making these Sclerotia, that is a good thing. Morels also senesce very quickly, similar to a lot of cordyceps species. So you want to have a really fresh culture. You don't want to have a culture of morels that's been expanded out, 100 times. But what seems to happen is these morel strains, they eventually, once they're expanded too much, they lose their ability to make Sclerotia. So at that point, obviously we would say, well, they're probably not going to be as likely to make mushrooms, or definitely not going to make mushrooms at that point. So this is a really fresh culture, started from spores, just cleaned it up on agar, moved it to grain, and we took it to pasteurized fuel pellets. What I did is I had quart grain jars, fully colonized. It was actually wheat berries, wheat grain. And all I did is I took a 3T filter patch bag here from Unicorn Bags, and I put 1 cup of hardwood fuel pellets in the bag, followed that up with 1 cup of boiling water to hydrate the fuel pellets, and then we let that sit warm for about an hour or so. It's not a true pasteurization, but it sat warm for an hour or so, put it that way. When I do the bigger bags, that's more of a true pasteurization, but these small bags, they just don't really hold the heat, so pseudo pasteurization. Anyway, then we mixed in a quart of grain spawn, which is a crap load of grain spawn, so that's why we're able to get away with doing this with no contamination. So what I wanted to do is, because we're going to do surface inoculation, so we're going to sit these bags right on the surface of my bed. I'm going to stab them full of holes in the bottom so that mycelium can just crawl out and go down into the soil, into my bed. So because I knew I wanted sort of flat cakes to do surface inoculations like this, I just flattened it out kind of like a cake here in the bottom half of the bag. And what I'm going to do now is, I have my impulse sealer out here with me. I'm going to impulse seal right here just above the substrate, which is going to cut off the filter patch from the substrate. So that's going to give me a nice little cake. The reason I can do that is because I'm about to stab this full of holes. You would not want to seal this and cut your mycelium off from the filter patch unless you're ready to stab this thing full of holes, because you're just going to suffocate your mycelium. So we're going to take, I think I have 10 of these bags. Got another one here. They're all kind of looking like this. They're all loaded with Sclerotia. When you're doing surface inoculations with spawn that's in bags like this, you do not want to do it too early in the year. I actually found that out the hard way. What happens is, you know, these bags are like a little mini greenhouse, and if these get any sun at all when it's warm out, these are going to overheat, and once these overheat, it's going to kill your mycelium, and just it's going to get taken over with mold and bacteria. Basically, you want to wait till the fall when temperatures are cooler and the sun's not as hot, and definitely give them some shade if you can. You could use shade cloth, row cover, whatever. I'm gonna throw some leaves on them with a little all natural shade. I have my impulse sealer set to 5. Kind of have to play with them, they're all a little different. See what works best for you. I'm actually just gonna cut a corner off of my bag first so I can get the air out of it. Clean up your gussets a little bit. Try and get it nice and tight. Gonna hold that arm down for a little bit because that plastic is melted. We want to let it cool for a second so we don't rip our bag. Pop it up. So we got a nice seal there. And we're just gonna take our scissors. Get rid of that. And we have a nice flat mycelium cake here to put on our morel bed. Still have our wild leeks in here. They grew really well this spring. I didn't harvest them. I just wanted to let them grow the first year. But you can see some of the flower stalks there. Still there. Some of the seeds have dropped into the bed, so they're kind of reseeding themselves. They actually spread through seed and they're root spreaders both, so we should have a ton of them next spring. So we're probably just gonna do like rows of 3 down the bed in between the rows of where I kind of know the leeks are. What do you think? Does that sound like a good plan? The way we stab these full of holes here is take one of our bags, and I showed this to you guys before, but in case you missed it, this is just a broadhead on the end of a file handle that I rigged up. And this works great for poking holes in oyster bags and oyster columns too, because it makes like a 3-way slit. You can just stab nice slits in your oyster bags or columns with this tool too. It works really well. It also works great for this. So our goal is to just make a bunch of holes in the bottom of this bag because we want our mycelium to be able to travel into the bed. And what I usually do is kind of clear out a little spot. I know I have a row of leeks here, probably a row of leeks here. Kind of roughly get them in the middle. Nestle it in. Pack a little dirt around it, and that's it. I used a really high grain to sawdust ratio. Obviously, when I made these bags too, I'm just using a cup of hardwood fuel pellets to a quart of grain spawn. So that is really, see, a really heavy spawn rate. I'm trying to create some nutrient stratification because common belief is that morels will grow to areas where there's less nutrient density, and in those areas they will form sclerotia, which will eventually become fruit bodies. And that makes sense from an evolutionary standpoint, because when they have plenty to eat, it's easy living. All of a sudden they get to an area, it's run out of nutrients, then they pop mushroom. Then those spores travel on the breeze and find a better place to inhabit, more conducive environment. So it makes sense from an evolutionary standpoint. We're trying to recreate that, I guess, here by using very nutrient dense spawn bags. And the bed is not nutrient dense. It's actually mostly sand with some soil mixed in, sand and soil. So the mycelium should travel into the bed and find it not as nutrient dense as where it came from, and hopefully make some sclerotia. I think that's why the morels tend to always make sclerotia like at the bag surface, because basically they travel through this nutrient rich substrate, they get to the outside, they run out of food, and boom, pop all the sclerotia. 6, 8, 10. All right, so I was right with my initial estimate. I did actually have 10 spawn bags. So I just kind of spread them out. 2 rows of 3 in the middle, 2 rows of 2 outside. Nestled them in, tried to keep them between the rows of the wild leeks, which I can kind of still tell where they are. Now we just gotta grab some leaves. Don't want to cover them real heavy with leaves. Don't want them like matted, but just like that. Give them a nice loose covering, give them some shade that'll also hold the moisture in. We do have rain coming starting tomorrow for the next few days, so it'll make this soil nice and moist. What are you eating, sir? Tree bark? Yeah, I see you. This should also hopefully give me some bonus points with Mrs. Renegade. Watching out the window, thinking I'm just like cleaning up the yard here. She doesn't know I'm out here solely to do wacky mushroom experiments. I mean, we've been married 17 years, so she probably assumes that. All right, that is it, guys. We're gonna call it a wrap. Morel bed in. So, light leaf cover. Just gonna keep an eye on this because the wind could blow these leaves around. I want to just keep a light leaf cover on top of these bags, as I mentioned. Hold the moisture in to our bed. Also give them some shade. So we'll keep an eye on that. Like I said, I have rain coming the next few days, so it's gonna water this in nicely. And maybe we'll check back in a month or so, lift up a couple of these bags and see how that mycelium's crawling into the bed. We'll just see what happens, but I'm gonna call it a night. It is martini time. So hit me up in comments, let me know what you think, and I will catch you next video.